Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show. Hey everybody, welcome into this week's edition of Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with Phil Putney and myself. We're going to talk about things getting murky. I got this little article here and breakdown. We're going to go through murky issues that make retirement planning harder. And Phil, it's definitely murky out there.
It's getting murky right now. Yeah, with not what we're talking about, but a whole lot of other points. So
yeah, exactly. It kind of looks like the Detroit River.
Yeah, that's right.
This is a little hard to see, or
you can't see the bottom. So
can't see the bottom. Yeah, or what is the one that's always getting the bad? Erie.
Erie, yes,
Lake Erie is always getting it. Yeah. All right, so I got this USA Today article we're going to go through. We'll put we'll put it up in the show notes as well, and it's talking about some 3 murky issues that increase retirement planning's degree of difficulty.
Sure.
Obviously, Phil, this is right up your alley. You're right in the middle of tax season. We've got the world chaos going on top of the prior world chaos going on top of the prior world chaos going on. So anyway, we're going to talk about this a little bit, just kind of get your take. We'll weigh in and chat about some things. Got some key takeaways here.
Sure.
A couple of key points for you, just to kind of kick it off. The author is Christy Bieber from Motley Fool. Christy based her 3 murky issues off a recent report from the Insured Retirement Institute. It surveyed the adults about their readiness for their later years, getting ready for retirement. It found that millions of Americans are lacking some of the most basic knowledge to achieve successful retirement, which I think you'd probably agree with, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of us don't do a very good job of this.
Yeah. I mean, I hear all the time when we're working with clients on a plan for retirement that they never realized how complex it was. I mean, there's a lot of options, a lot of moving parts. In a retirement plan, if you choose to kind of make the plan and make the best interaction of all these parts. I mean, you just let it happen.
Yeah.
And it's not hard at all then, but you don't get the results you want. But
right. You're just
kind of
just going with the flow, whatever.
Flying by the seat of your pants. So
that's right. Yeah. So whatever happens. Okay. So let's get into these takeaways, Phil. I'll toss out the headline. I'll let you kind of highlight some of the things that you've noticed from within it or whatever the case might be. So murky take number 1, Americans are confused about how much income growth is needed to offset inflation. I'm assuming this was prior to the inflation we're dealing with. Normal inflation is probably the conversation. This is even worse right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, right now, frankly, there's not a lot you could invest in to offset inflation like we see right now.
Not at 8%.
Not at 8%, not in a conservative or more, conservative type fashion.
Right.
So with anything, I mean, you've got to look beyond today, right? So the point in time we're going through with inflation right now, hopefully is a short period, reactions to world events and things that have happened. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the reality is everything moves in cycles. Inflation's no exception. We've been riding this inflation cycle down for years, just like interest rates. We've kind of been bouncing along the bottom for quite a few years now. And it's a couple of times it's tried to peak, but the Feds have pushed it back. And I think this time we're going to start to see the reality of inflation coming back. So yes, in a plan, you have to plan for long-term inflation. Mm-hmm. Make sure you've got vehicles positioned to handle that. Either through income, Social Security is a great piece of that because it does have an inflation adjustment, that cost of living or COLA.
Right.
Never meant to keep up entirely with inflation, but I mean, this year was a great example. We got for 2022, 5.9%, and that was based on what happened last year. Yeah. So, I mean, people were pretty happy with that.
Mom was excited about that. She was like, woohoo. And then now she's like, well, that didn't do anything.
But I mean, think about what, you would have had if you didn't have it. So a pension, a lot of pensions don't have any kind of inflation.
They typically don't get those, right?
Right. Most of them don't. I mean, unless it's a governmental pension or, some nonprofits, do so.
Well, so clearly people are more aware of inflation, obviously, right now than we have been for a while. But in general, when people come in to see you and they're trying to put stuff together, do they ever really kind of think about that, take that into account? Or is that something, obviously, you've got to say, hey, this is something we're going to plan for? Because most of us just kind of think about it like calories. We just ignore it.
Right. Yeah. Most people don't think of it long term. we definitely plan for it in our overall plan, and make sure then when we're implementing too, how do we position assets to help hedge against that long term?
Right.
Because in inflation, you can't, like anything, you can't look at the short term situation. It's got to be the plan for the long term, just like taxes. I mean, if you're looking at just the taxes in the current scenario, you're going to get the wrong answer. You have to look at the big picture long term. What's my plan to handle long term tax effects? Same thing with inflation. What's the plan to handle that? And unfortunately, I think for a lot of retirees, if you look at these typical inflationary cycles, they're slower moving traditionally, and people retiring today are retiring at the bottom of this curve. So during their retirement, the probability is that, long term, you're going to have probably a higher level of inflation for sure than what we've had the last 10 years.
So back of the napkin kind of, math real fast, if you want to, if you need $5,000 a month now, in retirement, then typically it's 22 years, it doubles, right? Is that correct? So
the old rule of 72.
Okay, so but either way, so then it's like you need 10,000 a month. Is your plan accommodating for that through, let's say, because maybe you're retired 30 years, but then you add the level of inflation we're dealing with and whether or not it sticks around or not. So you definitely have to take this into account. And this the study they did, Phil, showed that 26% of workers, only 26 could correctly identify the level of income growth they would need. So that's a pretty low number. Saying that, hey, I've got to take this into account.
Right. I mean, that's, again, you've got to understand and look at it long term. When we build a plan out historically to at least today, we've been using like 2.7% in inflation. That's been the 20-year average. Now with what we started to see, that's obviously going to start to bump up.
Sounds crazy to say that doesn't now.
Yeah. But I mean, the reality is when you look at inflation, it doesn't sit on its own, so it's not all of a sudden inflation happens and, we're at 10% inflation and, the banks are still paying 0.5% interest. I mean, that historically doesn't happen. Short-term periods like this, you're going to see some spikes, some reactions that are way beyond the norm. You can't react like we talked with markets. You can't react all of a sudden to just that. I mean, there's really nothing you can do to plan for this huge level of inflation right now, but hopefully the good news is, historically we've not had huge spikes like that extended long periods of time. They've been spikes, and then especially when it's something like a reaction to what's going on in the world today. I mean, there's a reason for it we can point to.
So the big takeaway then from this first thing is that typically we don't, even just normal inflation, we don't often plan for that. Obviously your advisor is going to be trying to help you understand that you're going to need to do that, especially for longevity, because we're all living longer. It's the big risk multiplier, which we've talked about before. So let's go to takeaway number 2, Phil. Murky number 2, we'll call it.
Murky 2.
Murky 2. Most folks don't know how much Social Security will actually provide. I think we go and look at the number, and we go, okay, well, I'm getting whatever the number is, $2,000 a month or whatever, the SSA.gov says. But talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times we take it for granted, right? We don't look at really the benefit that it is, and
it's a big one. The number
it can be a significant benefit. I mean, on average, and obviously this is going to be dependent upon what your retirement looks like, but it represents around 40% of what a retiree is going to need in retirement. Could be more, could be less. Depends on, what you need. But I mean, that's a significant piece of retirement. And there's a lot of planning opportunities around it. I mean, it's kind of the building block we start with our clients is understanding what is Social Security? What are the opportunities we have? And how do we get the most out of that benefit? And granted, there are some risks, right? I mean, don't listen to the news and, it's going broke and make the decision based on that because you're getting the wrong information. It's not going broke. The trust fund is running out. If that happens, there could be an adjustment in benefit.
Right.
But there's a lot of realities and things that are can take place to fix that you have to understand the facts of it before you make a decision like anything.
Well, and to
Right.
your point, less than half, 42% of Americans
Yep.
can correctly identify the average SS benefit.
Right.
And there's so many, and I know they change the rules a lot of times. There's different things that you can do. So there's so much that goes into the claiming strategy when you're trying to
Absolutely.
figure out how to do it. And that's, Phil, when you're sitting down with an advisor like yourself, it's sitting down and saying, okay, are we pulling from Social Security first, or are we pulling from our own, resources? What's going to be the better strategy? At what time do we turn this on? And we've talked about all these things numerous times. It all rolls into that overall plan.
Absolutely. You've got to have a plan and understand what that looks like. And there's pros and cons on both sides. We teach classes on Social Security and taxes. In fact, I've got one going tonight.
Oh,
in the class, we talk about which horse you're going to ride first, the asset horse or Social Security,
Yeah.
where are you going to pull the money from?
Yeah.
And there's pros and cons. You have to start with first running the math, understand what are the options I have with Social Security. It's not like it was back when it was first instituted by FDR, right? Back then it was pretty easy.
Yeah.
You didn't have any options. Age 65 was it. That was when the benefit started.
Yep.
There was no delay in early and spousal and all the other things that we have today.
Yep.
Today there's options, and the other side of that whole equation is the tax component too, because Social Security is very special from a tax standpoint, and how it gets taxed is depending on other sources of income. So somewhere between 0 and 85% of that benefit is going to enter the tax equation. And you can have control on that depending on what those other sources of income are. Delaying Social Security, growing that benefit. If it's a bigger component of your income, maybe we can drop the taxability. So,
right, definitely. And there's so many different facets to it, right? I mean,
there's a lot of options. So, bottom line is, it's complex. Don't ignore it. Don't make the wrong decision. Don't shoot from the hip and just say, I'm going to retire at 62 and I'm going to take it. I got to get it before it's going to go broke.
I got
understanding the facts.
I got a little trivia for you here, Phil, since you were talking about Social Security. Do you know the first person? A lot of you guys tend to know this. The first person that got Social Security benefits.
Yep, Ida Mae Fuller.
Yep.
She was now legal secretary, Ludlow, Vermont. So,
look at you. Yeah. You go. Yeah. Now here's the trick question of it. She technically wasn't the first person. Did you know that? Did you know that? So she's the first person to get recurring benefits, monthly benefits.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the first person was actually Ernest Ackerman, and he got 17 cents.
Okay.
He received a total of 17 cents after paying only 5 cents into the program.
Okay. Well, Ida Mae's got him beat because I think she paid in like $25 and got back over 27,000 or something.
To your point,
because she lived to 100. So
there you go. Yeah. So that goes right to the point of not really understanding sometimes, how much, it can be, right? The amount of it.
Absolutely.
Could be a pretty substantial amount. And so the claiming strategy goes into place. So anyway, a fun little trivia side bit. We'll get back into the murky conversation. So again, part of that conversation is making sure that you're realizing and working with an advisor who's taking in Social Security into account as part of the plan, not just here's all the stuff you've accumulated and then Social Security. So you want to have it all working together. All right. Murky number 3. Withdrawal rates are a mystery to many people. This is, I think, a big one for people, Phil. I've got the 401k. I've got a Roth. I've got a traditional. I've got some whatever, right? Here's my stuff. How do I use it? Like, how do I turn it into income?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what retirement's about, right? Is, okay, I no longer work. Where's my income coming from? And to me, this is always one of those pet peeves, because I think there's a lot of rules of thumb in retirement, and people try to make it easy. Which, okay, I understand. I mean, if you're in your 30s or 40s, kind of looking down the road, trying to get an idea of, how much do I need? What does this look like? That's a great approach. At least it gets you thinking in that direction.
Sure. Get the ball rolling.
Yeah. When you're at retirement, it's not, to me, a withdrawal rate. I don't want to say it's irrelevant, but it's not the fact that you should be looking at.
Okay.
It really comes back to, what does my income need? What do I need to spend on a monthly basis net? And then now that you know that, where's it going to come from? We talked about Social Security. That's a big component of it.
Right.
Now if we're delaying Social Security and spending from our retirement early, that withdrawal rate's going to look
totally different. Which horse are you riding, to your point?
5, 6, right? Yeah, it might be 5, 6, 7%. which if you're looking at withdrawal rates, oh, that's completely, unsustainable. You can't do that. Absolutely. Right. Long term, but this is short term. So again, you can't get focused on withdrawal rates as your primary focus in retirement.
Well, I think our brains sometimes need which is why the rule of the 4% rule.
The 4% is where kind of it started.
It became so popular. And I think because for us who don't do this on the regular, we can do the simple math and go, I got $1 million, 4% rule. I'm pulling out 40 grand. Cool. I'm done. Right.
Right.
It just makes it easy.
And that's where it all started, was just that, trying to make it easy. And looking as that rule of thumb, I always say, if you want to build a house looking like this, get your thumb out there and say, yeah, it's pretty close. It'll get you there. Yeah. As a plan, no, it's not a good option.
Yeah. It might help for that back of the napkin conversation, but let your advisor do the more serious numbers.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, the other downside of the whole withdrawal rate and relying on that is, if you're going to use that as your retirement plan, so to speak, you have to be comfortable with a fluctuating amount of income.
Good point.
The market's dropped 30%. Are you willing to take a 30% decrease in your income?
Good point.
Most people do not.
Right.
They can't, because they've got, here's my fixed expenses.
Yeah. I can't do it.
So you can't. Yeah. It's, again, there's a lot of approaches to retirement planning. This is one of them. Not a favorite of mine. It's a rule of thumb to get you pointed in the right direction. But other than that, be careful.
Okay. So there's it's definitely some murky stuff out there. There's murky times going on. Phil, any kind of thoughts that you have as we wrap up to say, look, if you find yourself in one of these positions where you don't understand how inflation is affecting you or whatever the case is there anything, aside from obviously turning to a professional, any little thing, a piece of advice you might give folks if they're feeling a little unsure what to do?
It's like anything complex. You can't, there's two approaches always, right? You can take the simple approach and just let it happen. Okay. Which unfortunately, you're probably not going to get a good result long term.
And many people do.
But there's a lot of people that do. They just walk into retirement, start taking money out of the 401ks, IRAs, draw Social Security early, don't really think of it. A lot of them, it'll work just fine and they'll be okay. Some it won't. If you want to maximize the income you get, minimize taxes, you need to have a plan and understand all these different pieces and how it fits together. Yeah, it's complex. It's not easy, but as anything in life, you take the easy road or the more difficult road. If it was easy,
everybody would do it.
That's right. If you want a good result that is yours, how you figured it out, you planned it with an advisor or on your own, if this is something you really enjoy and want to dig into it, more power to you. But definitely. Don't just wing it and jump into it without understanding all these pieces, because it's the difference between a really good retirement and one that you're running the risk of maybe running out of money or getting hit with big long-term inflation you haven't planned for, or higher taxes, all the different pitfalls that you might have in retirement.
Yeah, and the stress that comes with it when all you want to do is enjoy your retirement. So
yes, that is the key.
And that is the key, definitely. So like I said, we'll put the article in the links and so on and so forth. It was this conversation about these murky times that we find ourselves in. So if you got some questions though about your own situation, or you're working with a professional but you want to get a second opinion or whatever the case is, Phil does that stuff all the time. If you're already working with Phil, then you've got a good plan in place. But you know what, sometimes you get questions as well too. So as always, make sure you reach out before you take any action. You can find all the information on the screen if you'd like to find Phil that way. You can just go to philstaxhacks.com if you're listening in the audio version, philstaxhacks.com. You can also give them a jingle at 248-888-7530. That's 248-888-7530. And we'll see you next time on Phil's Tax Hacks and other retirement facts.
Investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and/or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.